Yo, parents and people watching, if you're not a parent, let's have a look at this discussion where parents are looking at whether or not you should be comparing your child with other kids and why. Now, this is a fun one, so if you want to jump in, hit the link in the comments, the last link, the other links, all the products. Smash that link, join up, or bring in. You can have a chat with me, tell me why I'm right, why I'm wrong, what your opinion is, why it's there, yada yada yada. Because conversations are always fun. So let's get into this. Well, they're not always fun, but for this one, they will be. Should parents compare their kids with others in a way that fosters healthy competition and a desire to improve? Jenny, yes, sure. I don't see it as comparing, though. It's generally showing a child what another does to achieve their goals, which is comparison. Comparing to me still has a negative context in my eyes when it comes to children. Okay, cool, but that's just straight up comparison. So I agree with her on the approach. I can see that she doesn't like the word comparison, which a lot of people don't because they tend to give it a negative connotation. It doesn't have a negative connotation in the way that she's using it, but yes, it is still comparison. Just is. Right, next one. Would not work in my household. Ha ha. Maybe sit down and ask your child what they need or feel they need to help achieve their goals. Each kid is different and has different understanding, needs, and desires. Agree. Ask them personally how they would feel with this question and to answer honestly with zero consequences. Brilliant approach. I think it's really, really good. And I asked her why. We're all very different. I grew up in an abusive house and always felt I had to 100% compare, I assume, or be compared to others. But my kids who are varying levels of the spectrum have grown up to be able to accept who they are, quite vocal about themselves and how what works for you will not work for them. Lol. I'm sure there's been some great discussions with that. 17-year-old dropped out of school, is not her thing, and I was not interested in becoming like her peers. Even this comment here is a really clear indication that she is comparing herself to her peers and says, no, I don't want to be like that. The only way you would have that understanding is through comparison. So the comparison's being used for whatever reason, it's been viewed as not a great thing. I disagree with that premise. I think this is a really positive example of how to use comparison. Most kids probably don't have the encouragement that these ones clearly do to express that, or the safety to actually express it. So now she has a mass following on her TikTok for her art, earns money through their Discord, and takes commission. Brilliant. I'm even opening an art gallery for her and kids like her who don't fit into normal. I think this is great. If they don't fit into normal, you are then comparing them to normal. So again, comparison is being used. My 12-year-old disengages when teachers try to do competition. I say it makes them feel like they're never good enough. So we encourage strengths. And I mean, even this. So we encourage strengths. How do you know it's a strength if you're not comparing it to your weakness? And they set their own goals and they already have YouTube subscribers for their animation. Brilliant. They say it makes them feel like they will never be good enough. This is hold on, let me make that a little bigger. This is a really key point, right? And this is something a lot of people will mess up, and it's when competition and comparison gets the negative connotation, because it's been used in a way to make the child feel inferior or the person feel inferior rather than used as an opportunity to help them grow and become better. The way this happens is when any competition is done and the focus goes from the process in achieving the goal and who you become in that process to the goal is that's the only thing that's important. I've got some great examples of this in my life. And you've probably got some great ones as well. Like if you've ever set a goal to achieve and you haven't achieved it and then you feel like the world's ended. Even if you got really close. And I'll use this example from when I was 25 or I was 26. I don't remember which. I think it was 25 that year. and my goal was to make $100,000 that year. And it was a process. I look back, that's very easy to do now. It's not a hard thing. It takes a certain amount of work and ingenuity to do, but the actual way to do it is very easy now. I've done it a few times. But at the time, that was really difficult for me. I don't think I'd ever cleared 50 in a year. So setting that goal was really big. It was really tough for me. And at the end of it, the number I got was like 92 or 93 grand for the year. And I put myself into a depression for like 3 or 4 months because I didn't hit that goal. I was so upset. I was so dirty on myself. I worked incredibly hard to achieve it, and I didn't get it. Mind you, about 2 weeks into the new year, I'd made the extra eight or 7 grand or whatever it was, and I had cleared that. I was just 2 weeks late. But I didn't care. I didn't achieve my goal in the timeline. I got mad depressed, super upset, because my thought process was on the end result, which is important. You have to know where you're going. But you don't tie everything up in that end result. What it should be tied up is comparing, okay, cool, this is the goal I set. It's stretched me. I had to change to achieve it, otherwise I would have already achieved the goal. So who am I as a person now? Who was I when I set the goal? Let's have a look at that and compare. And when you do that comparison, it feels amazing because you grow so much, and you look back at it with these eyes and you're like, wow, holy crap, I know I didn't hit that goal, but Jesus, I have improved. I am so much better as a human being. I've improved in this, and this. It's like a very cool thing, right? So I switched up. I made this mistake the other day, actually. I set a goal this year where I wanted my entire year to be funded through passive income that I'd set up over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And I'm traveling around the world at the moment. I'm in Georgia in Eastern Europe. I have been living in South America. I'm going to go back there. And my passive income streams have been set up, and I'm sort of managing them as I'm going. And I went through and I ran my numbers, and I was like, something happened. One of the companies that's paying me dividends that I invested in made a loss, so they're not going to pay out their dividends, and they were paying out big dividends. And it was a very important part of my strategy. And I just thought, I got really, really upset. And I got really upset for a few days. I was like having all these ideas in my head. I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to go back to working a job. I'm going to fly back to Australia now. I'm not going to do any of this shit. Like, I just went mental. And this was about 2 days, right? Because I'd worked out my numbers, and I had about 3.5 grand at that time. I bought a couple. I've spent like $1,000 on flights and accommodation and things since. So it's down to about 2,500 leeway that I've got at the moment until I decide to go back to Australia, which is going to be right at the end of October. And, traveling around Europe, different hotels, I'm not in one spot, so you're eating out at more times. It's likely going to cost more than that before I even get back to South America. And then I've got another 2-ish months in Colombia there. And I just thought, I got so upset because my goal was to have it all be paid on passive income. But then I sat back and looked at it, and I was like, hold on. Let's have a look at what I've actually done. So I left Australia in November last year. I flew to Canada first, stayed there for a day, went to Mexico, lived there for 2 weeks, traveled through Mexico. Then I flew to Ecuador, traveled around Ecuador for a couple of weeks. Beautiful mountains all down the coast. Experience, which was hideous, by the way. The mountains there are incredible. Had all these experiences, met these people, flew then to Brazil to go and see my Brazilian family I hadn't seen in 12 years. Got to stay there for 6 weeks, traveled around Brazil, found this new place in Brazil that I'd happily move to and live. Then I flew from Brazil to Colombia, fell in love with this city as the best city I've ever seen in my life. I've met some amazing people, met some friends and mates that have like some of the coolest people I've ever met in my entire life. Then I've now come to Europe. I'm going to do a 2-week trip around Europe. So I flew to Turkey, and then I was going to do a few cities in Turkey, and then I was like, nah, screw this, it's not working. I'm going to fly over to Georgia. Like, I've got all this choice. I'm doing a lot of flights, right? I'm going to fly over to Georgia, where I am now. Stay in this place, and then I'm going to go to Armenia tomorrow. I'm going to Armenia. I'm traveling around like 10 different countries throughout Eastern Europe. Then I'm going to fly back to Colombia, live there for another two months, and then I'm going to fly back to Australia. At the end of all that, it's probably going to cost me, should I get no more income coming in, which I will, but if nothing else were to come in, it would cost me about $5,000 to have that entire experience of money that I wasn't just getting paid throughout the year. That's incredible. Like, that's insane. But I was freaking out and moving myself into a depressive state, because that's like worst case scenario, right? That's the worst case scenario. And I was freaking out and moving into a depressive state because I thought that the whole world was ending, because my entire passive income stream would not support entirely the 12-month trip around the world that I've done. And I just laughed at myself when I sort of ran through and did the numbers. And then I also worked out my net worth, and I worked out, okay, look, if I took in capital gains and all that for this, I would be like, I've got another 30 grand ahead that I'm fine with. But it just wasn't my rules. I didn't take that into account. So it had to be this passive income. So it was just really funny. And that's the problem with comparison, where if your focus is only on that sort of end result, and this is where you can get a very negative connotation to it, and a lot of kids do, because that's how school functions. It's all about the test results, about the test score. It's not about the process that you go through. But if you go back and you look at where you were, and you look at the entire process and the steps that you've taken, it is mind-blowing, the improvements that you can make. And if that's what you focus on, you will have a very, very different relationship with the word comparison and what it means to you, and also how it affects your life. Really important thing, in my opinion. So let's go back and have a look at this. I know I got a little bit sidetracked, but I hope you enjoyed that story. I've enjoyed going through it in my own head. So encourage strengths, and they set their own goals, and they already have YouTube subscribers for their 2 animations, which are very different kids who can't use the same ways to achieve goals. So not even healthy competition would work, and they would lecture you hard on why. But again, 2 kids who can't use the same ways to achieve goals. That is a comparison. Like, in itself, you're comparing the 2 kids and their ability to use certain methods. It's just a healthy way to do it. 9-year-old just watched his sisters and knows if he puts his mind to it, he can achieve his dreams, and never competed in any form of competition against one another. They have, you just haven't called it a competition. But it's definitely comparison. It's happening all the time. It's actually wrong. They compete in rock, paper, scissors, ha ha ha, had a mad laugh, and then gave her a brief reason why I disagreed. But with what she was sort of describing. Oh, she just responded. Oh, she's responded. Right, let's go have a look at this, because there's probably. Oh, hold on. Hi, peeps. Wrong one. Let's go back to this one. Just commenting on the video. But yeah, like, that's sort of the take on it. So all this stuff is comparison. It's just the thing that Sarah's done, she's done quite effectively, is used it really positively. She doesn't like using the word, clearly, but she has done that process with her kids and done it very positively, which is why the kids are getting really good outcomes. And comparison can be used in that way, and it should be. That's how they improve. And that's my take on it anyways. You might disagree with me. If you do, drop a comment, tell me why. Tell me why competition is the worst thing in the world and there should be none, and everyone should get participation and trophies. There should be no first prize anymore. I'm I'm happy to argue against that. But I'm always interested to hear other opinions and challenge mine, because that is a competition in itself. It's like, where am I lacking? Where are the holes in my argument? How can I improve? It's just that my focus is on very strongly now comparing to myself and how I can improve holes in my arguments so that I become better. So I'm comparing myself now to who I was before to who I could become, who I want to become. And I think that's a really healthy thing to do. Just needs to be shaped in that light. And a lot of current institutions don't do that, which is why competition can be seen very, very negatively a lot of the time. I'm going to leave it there, anyways. I'm going to go, and I'll hit you guys up with the next one, and I'll be in Armenia, continuing my journey. When I talk to you guys next, I assume in a couple of days. See ya.